Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. Today I wanted to come out into the woods and complete 5 basic carving projects just to have a chance to practice working with my knife. And neither of these are essential. These are not things that you'd have to have. This is not about survival or getting things done quickly. This is about bushcrafting. It's about taking your time, enjoying working with your knife, and focusing on fine detail and carving techniques. So I just want to make that clear up front that a lot of the effort that I put into these 5 projects is not necessary, but I'm doing it for the sheer enjoyment of doing it and for the practice using my main cutting tool, which is my belt knife. With that said, I'm going to make 5 implements that I can use when it comes time to do camp cooking. So the 5 implements I'm going to make, number 1, are a toggle, which I can use to hang my bush pot or my kettle over the fire. It can also be used to hang your haversack or gear off the ground. I'm also going to make a spatula. When we're cooking things up in the pan, we need that spatula to flip that pancake or those eggs or whatever it is you're cooking. I'm also going to make a set of tongs with nothing but wood, so I'm not going to use cordage and things like that, which I've shown in the past. So a pair of tongs. I'm also going to make a pair of chopsticks. I like to eat with chopsticks, and it's easier than carving a spoon if all you have is a belt knife. So having chopsticks is good. Once your food's cooked, you can use it to eat with. And last, I'm going to make a toothpick, because when we finish eating, we got to have that toothpick to clean up our teeth on the inside. So stick with me and let's get started on these 5 basic carving projects. So I found a nice piece of maple here. It's about the right size, length. Should work out for our tongs. Alright, so I think I've got a nice little piece of maple here. It's going to be a little knotty back here just because of those branches coming out, but it should work for the purpose of making a little set of tongs. So what you want to do is come about midway to your stick and just put a little mark, and I'm just eyeballing that midway point. And now what I have to do is thin out this area. And I'm just using a little draw cut there, as you can see, a little knot, and this is green maple, so it's not the easiest of woods to carve. But I'm basically doing this like I would do a saddle notch. It's just very exaggerated here. I'm going to turn this around to the other side, come back and do the same thing. So I'm just going to keep thinning this out slowly, working from one side to the other. I want to go all the way through the heartwood. If you notice here, I'm getting into that heartwood here on this maple. I want to go past that into that last little layer of sapwood. Probably need to lengthen this up just a little bit. You want to be careful. This is where you kind of have to be delicate with this, because you don't want to cut too hard, because you can see I don't have much wood left right here, and it'd be very easy with a sharp knife to go right through that. So you have to start being more delicate. Now at this point I want to try to make sure that this is the same thickness all the way through. It's kind of like when you're making a bow and you have to tiller it. If you have a thick spot, and it's not going to bend the same as the thin spot, and that can cause a weakness and an easy break. So you want to thin this stuff out as even as you can, and that way it all kind of flexes the same. That'll make sense in a minute, I think. For me, it's almost essential to use this draw cut so I can see what I'm doing. By having it turned backwards like this, it makes it really easy for me to see exactly how much wood I'm removing. Alright, that's looking better. Let's put a little pressure on it and see how it responds. You want to slowly kind of bend those fibers in the wood. Kind of break those fibers loose. It might still be a little thick in a couple of spots. I'll thin that down and I'll bring you back. I'm just going to thin right through here a little bit. Alright, so I've got everything all finished up here. You can see what that looks like all thinned out. I've got my ends cleaned up. and that leaves me with a functional little set of tongs. These are a great implement to have in your camp if you're cooking up some bacon or something like that. This gives you something that you can use to flip food in a pan, grip things that are hot or whatever. And again, most important, this is just a great project for you to practice using your knife and develop those knife skills. This technique could be used for more than one purpose, most likely. So definitely worthwhile to spend the time making these just for fun, and also to give you a functional implement in your camp. One of the most simple and useful projects that you can start with when you're working on your knife skills is to make a simple toggle. And for function right now, I could use this stick just like it is with a piece of cordage and it will work fine. However, if you just want to practice some carving techniques and just kind of work with your knife a little bit, it's fun to go a little further. I start off by cutting a length of wood that's big enough in diameter to hold the weight of whatever it is I might want to support. Behind me, you can see my backpack hung up here, and it's being supported by a toggle. You don't want to use something too small for that. So if you're going to just support like a simple bush pot or something smaller is okay. If you're going to do something that's heavier like this pack, then you want something that's a little bit stronger. Anyhow, to get started, there's multiple ways of doing this. You can just crown off the ends if you want. Very simple process, just cutting in at a 45-degree angle. And this is the same thing that you might do if you were making a tent stake or pack frame or anything like that. You're just working with your knife to make something that's neat and functional at the same time. When I'm going to use a toggle for holding something that's a little bit heavier, I like to use green wood because it tends to be stronger and less brittle. So just crowning off these ends just to make it a little more aesthetically pleasing, which for function again has no bearings on it, but just for fun, just to practice the technique. Now I want to eyeball about midway on my toggle here, and what I'm going to do is put a mark with my knife blade, and I'm just going to spin the toggle around until I have a mark all the way around in the center of my toggle, just like that. It gives me a little bitty mark. And what I'm going to do is make that a stop cut. And I'm just going to keep going deeper. I'll turn around about 3 times with my knife. Stop cut. Now what I'm going to do is come in just enough that I can fit some number 36 bank line into that notch. And I'm going to work my way around. And all I'm doing is cutting in at a 45 to that stop cut. This will create a little V-notch channel for my cordage to fall into. And now I'll just come back and reinforce that stop cut and clean some of that stuff out. And again, none of this is necessary. The purpose of this is to practice knife skills and to create a project that you're proud of, which is part of the fun of, to me, bushcraft in itself is just taking your pride in your work, taking your time and enjoying the process, and not just getting it done as fast as you can as if you're in a rush. And so you can see what I've got there, and that's plenty good. It will hold my cordage just fine, and this toggle is really ready to go. Alright, so I think I'm done tweaking on this now, and you can see what I've got. Again, a lot of this work was totally unnecessary. However, if I'm out here to practice on my knife skills, then the more time I spend whittling on this, the more practice I'm getting with that knife. So it's just kind of fun to do that and to create a piece that I don't mind seeing hanging around in my camp. Alright, for my next project, I have just a piece of dry tulip poplar. This will be a good piece for a bow drill set, slightly small. And this will give me a chance to practice another technique, which is batoning with my knife. And there is definitely a technique to batoning. It's not beat your knife as hard as you can, but it should be very gentle. And this is actually a piece of dead wood that I'm using. As you can see, I'm just very gently tapping my knife. Now I'm keeping pressure down on the handle of the knife so that I don't bury the tip. So I'm pushing down on that handle, keeping that tip up a little bit. And as tulip poplar often does, it's split crooked like that, which is okay. I'll work around it. And honestly, if I am out here usually and I'm not doing a knife skills video, I'll do this with an axe. Alright, so just taking a look at the first piece that split off of this log, actually looking at that, I think there's a spatula right there that I won't have to work as hard to get to. So what I'm going to do is just start to remove some of this bark. And when you start, if you can start with a thinner piece of material, it's going to make your job a lot easier. Because with a spatula, you really want it thin. They function best when they're thin. So the thinner the wood, the less work you have to do, less wear and tear on your knife. But basically, this is a very simple process. All I want to do is just thin this bark and the round part of this off. Alright, so I got this piece of wood cleaned up pretty good now. And what I need to do is just kind of work out some of the thickness here. And I'm working on the outside of the wood. This is the inside where it split. This is the outside where the bark was. I'm just trying to work that down deeper into the sap wood. And again, there's no special technique for that. It's just hammer grip. And peel it off as smooth as you can. And obviously, I don't want my spatula to be thick all the way through. I want to give it more of a handle. So I'm going to come in about right here. Kind of taper that down a little bit. This is a good thing to practice because symmetry. I'm trying to make one side match the other. And that's a good technique to practice when you're working with your knife. A lot of times when you're making things, you have to get it to look the same on both sides or be equal, such as this, carving the handle of this spatula. This is another one of those situations where once you switch over to that draw cut, you can really start to fine-tune your carving, start to make things look nicer. Because you can really control what you're doing with your knife. You can see what you're doing with your knife better. Now, a good technique for thinning this on down where you can get some more leverage is to turn your knife around backwards and use this chest lever grip. As you can see, I'm using my back muscles when I do this. And again, the nice thing about this is I can see where the knife touches the wood and I have a little more control. And I can just tilt my hand up or down to go deeper into the wood or to make it more shallow. So it gives me a little more control of that. Now to get that little chisel edge here, I'm just using little soft thumb push cuts. I'm trying to be careful, especially on this corners. Those corners get thin fast. Sometimes they'll want to break off. Just get that little chisel going there. Make it easy to get up under foods and stuff. Even that out. That's good for now. Just a functional little spatula. Like this little tip is very thin. It'll be good for flipping an egg or a pancake. So another one of those tools that's fun to practice your carving skills with, and again, very functional when it comes time for camp cooking. For my next project, I'm going to carve a simple pair of chopsticks. By carving a pair of chopsticks, you're getting the chance to practice duplicating similar dimensions. So I make one chopstick and then I want to make another one that's identical to it so that I have a perfect pair. So that's a skill in itself, being able to replicate things that you make. Not just carving a one-off piece, getting lucky, but being able to reproduce the same piece over and over. That's definitely a next level skill. So that's what I'm going to do with these sticks. All right, so first thing I need to do is skin all the bark off of this. And carving this dry tulip poplar is almost too easy if you have a really sharp knife, because you can almost cut too much off if you're not careful, so you have to be a little gentle with it. But it's a very pretty wood, and when it's dry it makes nice camp implements. You don't have to worry about shrinking and cracking and all that stuff. It's already dry. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and strip these down and get started, which is a pretty simple process, just stripping bark, and I'll show you from there what I do. I've got this thing whittled down pretty good now, and I've got a shape that is larger at the top and a little more narrow at the bottom. And you can see I've switched over to this draw cut. And the nice thing about that is if I have a thick area like right here, I can concentrate my effort in that one spot. If I was doing a hammer grip, it'd be really hard to do that. I'd end up cutting too much. So where I have a thick spot, I can focus on just that one little area with this. and be delicate with it and see what I'm doing. I'll taper this down a little bit better. I love eating with chopsticks. I've been doing it since I was a kid, and being exposed to Asian culture quite a bit, I learned how to do this and spent a lot of time using chopsticks. I'll say it that way. Alright, so this is getting pretty good right here. And at that point, I mean, I could go ahead and switch over and make my other chopstick and make a pair that, you know, is quite functional. I'm just trying to put that extra little touch on the end. That's it. It's just a matter of thinning out the little spots and kind of getting it like you want it to be. Just to finish off this little tip here, I'm using the tip of my knife, that little push cut like that, just to thin that thing down a little, taper that 90-degree edge just a bit, just make it wear a little better. Alright, so these guys aren't exactly identical, but they're definitely functional. And these are a little bit bigger than the ones that I normally make. Here's a pair that I made recently. I've carried with me in my pack. I made them out of a harder wood. But you can see they're very similar. Similar dimensions. And it's good to be able to reproduce things like that. Not just carve one, but to be able to make more than one that's fairly identical in dimensions. So chopsticks, good thing to practice making and useful for camp. Now this last item that I'm going to carve might seem a little silly, but after a good meal it'll come in handy, and that is a toothpick. And this is just a little piece that chipped off when I was batoning for my spatula on that piece of tulip poplar. I'm just going to carve this down and give myself a toothpick. And this is good practice because I'm handling something that's so much smaller than, say, the spatula or the chopstick. So I'm learning to make smaller, finer cuts and being delicate with my material, because it'd be very easy to break this piece of wood. The key to it is I make a chisel tip, just like I did with my spatula, and that will do a good job of cleaning around your gum line. On the opposite side, I just shape it like a toothpick, pointed, and I use that for getting in between the teeth as well. This is where you have to have a very delicate touch with your knife not to mess this up. That's pretty good right there. Just kind of round that off. This is where that very delicate touch with your knife is really important when you're working with something minute like this, because it'd be very, very easy to mess it up at this point. Looks pretty good. It's probably really hard to see, but this end is pointed like a spear point. This end has a little minute chisel. When you go to use that, it gets right up in between your teeth really well, and it cleans up around the gum line really well. So it's a good tool to have. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at some of the process that I used to create these 5 basic implements to use out here in my camp. Again, none of these things are mandatory, but rather comfort items. And I could have improvised them a whole lot faster and with less detail if I needed to. But I wanted to take my time and really work with my knife and just develop and fine-tune those knife skills. As woodsmen, we normally think of our belt knife, that thing that's attached to us at all times when we're out here, as our #1 tool. So the more proficient that we become with it and the more things we can do with it and the safer we can use it, the more valuable that tool becomes to us. So hopefully these are things that maybe you'll get a chance to work on a little bit, kind of practice your knife skills, whether you're out in your camp or sitting on your back porch or in your backyard. Doesn't matter. If you're taking time to practice those skills, then you're gaining something from it. So anyway, I want to thank you for your time, interest. I hope that if you haven't subscribed, you'll go ahead and click subscribe now. Make sure you click the bell button so you stay informed when the next video comes out. And hopefully that won't be very long, as this one has been a little while in the making. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Until the next one, take care and God bless.